If I got a problem, you're the first one to know. But my feelings keep changing like stations on the radio. Oh, people act like optimists waiting for a good side to show.
When was the last time she had an expense reimbursed by We Charity?
I believe it would have been for the trip to London where she spoke at We, but those expenses were cleared in advance by the Ethics Commission.
And how much was it?
Mr. Poilievre.
How much were those expenses?
I don't have that number in front of me.
Mr. Prime Minister, it's very hard to believe you don't have that number. You've been embroiled in this scandal now for over a month, and these kinds of questions have been asked repeatedly. I asked it to you in the House of Commons weeks ago. You've had time to get it, so I'll ask again. How much was your spouse reimbursed by We for her recent trip to London?
Okay, to take an example, for a plane ticket that was booked for her flight to London, it wasn't something that she would have paid for to be reimbursed by
what about a hotel?
Charity. The We Charity would have actually paid for that ticket themselves, so we wouldn't have those answers on our credit cards, for example.
So you don't have any idea how much the We Charity paid for your spouse to travel to London?
Over the past number of months, I've been involved in serving Canadians and focused on that. But I know that the We Charity themselves have shared those expenses, and you had the opportunity to talk to them.
They have not shared those expenses, Prime Minister. They have refused to tell us the itemized expense for that trip, and they didn't even confirm she was on that trip. What hotel did they pay for her to stay at?
I don't know.
Okay. This would have been a very expensive trip, and it would have been paid for in March. Your government then, a month later, was amassing a program of $500 million, which you now admit you helped approve a month after that. How could you possibly have believed that it was appropriate for you to approve a nearly $500 million grant to a group that only 60 days earlier was paying for sumptuous travels for immediate members of your family?
Mr. Prime Minister.
The Ethics Commissioner fully cleared Sophie's volunteer unpaid work with We, whether it's for her podcast or her appearance at We events or her work as a We ambassador and ally. It was all entirely unpaid, but they reimbursed expenses, and that was clearance that was gotten in advance by the Ethics Commissioner.
And did you tell the Ethics
Commissioner? Mr. Poilievre, we're on equal time here, and the Prime Minister still has time. Go ahead, Prime Minister.
Obviously, that was not a concern for me, knowing that the Ethics Commissioner had approved of Sophie volunteering her time and having expenses covered for engagements with this.
And when you became involved with the decision to approve the $500 million grant to We Charity on May the 5th, did you then immediately inform the Ethics Commissioner that you were doing that, and and also inform the Ethics Commissioner that this group was paying expenses for your spouse?
As I said, the Ethics Commissioner already knew because he had approved Sophie volunteering with the We organization a long time ago. And secondly, my knowledge of We being involved in delivering this program only happened on May 8th, not on May 5th, as you are saying.
On May 8th, did you contact the Ethics Commissioner to seek permission to be part of the decision to approve this $500 million grant? Yes or no?
On May 8th, I received the formal recommendation by the Public Service that they go ahead with the We program, that they go ahead with the We program to deliver it. And I pulled it back from Cabinet and asked them to do further due diligence because I knew there would be questions asked.
I'm sorry, Prime Minister, back to Mr. Poilievre.
Time remaining?
You have a bit. Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Poilievre, who will be followed by Ms. Zerowitz. Mr. Poilievre, 5 minutes, please.
Yes or no question, Mr. Chair. Prime Minister, you twice were found guilty of breaking the Ethics Act. After those two convictions, did you decide to read the Act?
You got 14 seconds, Prime Minister.
Yes, I have read the Act a number of times.
Are you aware of Section 21?
Yes, since I've read the act, I'm aware of section.
What does it
21.
say?
I can pull it up for you, but if you have it in front of you, you can remind me which
Well, it says a
number that
public
is.
office holder of which you are one shall recuse himself or herself from any discussion, decision, debate, or vote in any matter in which, in respect of which he or she would be in a conflict of interest. Now, what you've admitted today is not just that you were in a conflict of interest, but that you consciously recognized in your May cabinet meeting that such a conflict might exist. That it didn't just slide by your desk, that you were consciously aware that there was an inappropriate link to your family that would put you in a conflict. Why did you, at that moment, not call the ethics commissioner and recuse yourself?
That is simply not true, Mr. Poilievre. The issue of advancing issues for one's own family. And by the way, the ethics commissioner is looking into this right now, and I fully trust his judgment on determining it. But at the same time, my concern around recusing myself was a question around perceptions, because I knew full well that this Canada Summer Students Grant program was not going to directly benefit my mother or my brother.
Your 16 seconds are up. Your 16 seconds are up. I'm going to ask you again, because nobody believes you when you say you don't know how much money your family has got from the We Group. So you've had a month to look into that. You knew you were going to testify here. Again, how much money total have your brother, mother, and spouse received from this organization? How much?
That information has been publicly shared, but I will highlight.
Well, then tell me what it is.
My mother
How much?
has
just the dollar figure
throughout her life.
The dollar figure,
in
Prime Minister.
Various ways, and is proud
How much?
of the work that she's done, and I'm proud of her.
How
as
much?
Well.
I'm looking for a dollar figure.
We can get that number for you if you like. It's been out in the media.
It's been in the media, but you don't know it?
I don't have it in front of me, and quite
you don't
frankly,
know how much your family has received from this organization, which you tried to give $500 million. Really?
Can I answer, Mr. Poilievre?
I'm waiting. You haven't done an answer so far. Let's make this the first one.
My mother has worked as an advocate.
The dollar figure, Prime Minister.
Speaker for many good organizations across the country.
Mr. Prime Minister, you are being asked a direct question at a parliamentary committee.
To support her because she does her own work, and I'm proud of the work that she does.
Point of order.
But I do not feel that it is my responsibility to peer into the work my mother is doing, because I have
point of order to suspend.
The work that she's doing.
Point of order to suspend,
I've come to learn that the chairperson's power has gone out and is no longer part of this meeting. May I propose that we
suspend we can keep Prime Minister and I can continue talking.
No.
I suspected that might be a problem. It's very convenient timing for the lights to go out.
Look, I got a message to the effect that his power has gone out. I have no reason to distrust him.
I hope you don't pull the fire alarm now.
Yeah, well, look, there's no intent in my own private home here in the middle of a pandemic. I don't have a fire alarm.
Mr. Fraser,
I propose
the general process is that the vice chair assumes the chairing of the meeting. So we'll continue.
And that would be me. So we'll continue the meeting, and I now give the floor to the member for Carleton. Mr. Prime Minister, you have. I'm going to ask you one last time. How much did your family get from this organization? How much?
Have you read the Conflict of Interest Act, Mr.
Yes,
Poilievre?
I have.
How does it define family?
I'm asking you.
How does it define
I'm asking
family?
you how much your family got.
The Conflict of Interest Act defines family as spouse and direct dependents.
Point of order.
So you're not going to answer that question.
Point of order.
So you're not going to answer the question then. So you're not going to answer the question about how much your family received. Okay, you're right.
Hold it, gentlemen. If you.
For working with we, and it was cleared by the Ethics Commissioner ahead of time.
Okay.
Mr.
Point of order,
Poilievre,
can I welcome back Wayne Easter? Can I welcome back Wayne Easter, a man we've deeply missed? Come on, Wayne, where have you been? Were you
look,
I had things under control for you while you were gone.
I mentioned that, Wayne. Pierre, it wouldn't be the first time you tried to put my lights out, and that's exactly what happened, Pierre. We got a thunderstorm here. Anyway, where will you're well into your 5 minutes, but go with one last question.
Mr. Trudeau, I'm going to conclude by asking you, you claim that you have no knowledge of the amount that has been paid in expenses to your spouse. You correctly pointed out that the Act defines family as including a spouse. Therefore, you know you're under investigation regarding the Act. I'm going to ask you again, how much in total, and I'm looking for a dollar figure here, sir, how much did your spouse receive in reimbursed expenses or other benefits from this organization? How much?
Your original question, Mr. Poilievre, was how much was my immediate family?
I asked you a different question now.
For,
how much?
Mr. Poilievre, the Prime Minister has the floor.
My wife has never been paid since I was Prime Minister.
Reimbursed for expenses.
Mr. Poilievre, could we please have order? We'll allow the Prime Minister to answer the question, and then we'll move on to Ms. Zerowitz. Sorry, Julie. Mr. Prime Minister, you have about 30 seconds here.
The Ethics Commissioner has fully cleared my wife to continue her advocacy and her work with We Charity and other organizations.
How much?
In the kind of work that she's been doing all her life.
Just the dollar figure.
She's doing it unpaid for We. She is not being paid by We for her advocacy or for her podcasts. They are simply reimbursing her for expenses.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Minutes, Mr. Poilievre, please don't shut my lights out this time, will you? Go ahead, Pierre.
Don't shut your own out either. You claimed that the program's purposes were threefold: help youth through the pandemic, help charities get through the pandemic, and help students pay for their post-secondary in the fall. Which of these could the Canada Summer Jobs Program not have done?
Actually, the three aims that I listed for the CSSG were encourage young people to step up, help out community organizations, and recognize volunteerism and reward volunteerism by students as a way of making a difference in this pandemic.
Back to Mr. Poilievre.
So you can't name a single one of these objectives that could not have been fulfilled by the Canada Summer Jobs Program.
That's not true, Pierre. The third one, recognizing volunteerism, is not done by the Canada Summer Jobs
recognizing paid volunteerism. So you called it volunteerism so that you could take it outside of the Canada Summer Jobs Program and give it to your friends at We. My next question: when you directed,
Mr. Poilievre, the Prime Minister's got about 8 seconds to answer that one. Then we'll go to your question.
The CSSG was about recognizing and rewarding volunteerism. It's not about jobs. It was about volunteerism, and that, unfortunately, is something that we can't do because this program.
Back to Mr. Poilievre.
You just misused the word so that you could justify outsourcing a program that already effectively exists within the government. Now, when you did that, you directed $500 million, and yes, you did. You were the head of the cabinet. Did you know that the group to which you were directing that $500 million was in violation of its bank covenant? Yes or no?
That is not something that we had as information at that point.
Did you know that the government money would go into a real estate shell foundation instead of into the We Charity? Yes or no?
The details on the payment were worked out by our professional public service in terms of how the contribution agreement flowed.
So did you know that the chair of the board had resigned? Yes or no?
No.
So you clearly did not do any due diligence of your own. As the chair of the cabinet responsible for approving a decision, you should have had some basic facts. Sir, you were using $500 million of taxpayers' money here. You had a fiduciary responsibility. Why didn't you ask these questions?
We have flowed tens of billions of dollars through the CERB, through the
question isn't about the
benefit, through various ways to help Canadians, and we were very, very active in making sure that flows right. There are many, many different programs, and in cabinet government, we trust the ministers and the public service to do their jobs and make sure that things are delivered in the right way, and in this case, they did.
Monsieur le Président, le temps est venu que le Premier
ministre... About 40 seconds.
Combien de fois est-ce qu'un ministre dans votre gouvernement aurait besoin de briser la loi sur l'éthique avant d'être congédié? Combien?
Nous prenons
Mr.
très au sérieux
Minister.
chaque fois qu'il y a
Combien?
des enjeux au niveau de l'éthique et nous allons
Combien?
traiter toute situation de
Combien?
façon directe.
Mr. Poilievre, the Prime Minister has the floor, and he has the right to answer. Mr. Prime Minister.
We will always take seriously
How many times?
any breaches of official codes. We will ensure that there are consequences, and we will look at every situation differently.
Fine. In
But
English,
our
I'll
focus
ask my
on-
last question.
Your last
English,
question
it would
is over.
be-
You're over your 5 minutes. Last night, you people were giving me the gears for not sticking and adhering to time. I'm adhering to time today. Mr. Fraser, you have the last round, 5 minutes, and then the Prime Minister will be released.